Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a different turn in what we're going to be talking about today. As the title suggests, we're going to be talking about finance and sort of looking at like the system that I started implementing and how that's kind of been working. So we will kind of review why I'm making a change within my budgeting and my actual why. So we're going to kind of break things into a few different categories today. I'm going to go through what system I'm currently using, what has changed, why I changed it to begin with, and sort of do a little check-in of how things are going. And at the very end of the video, I'm going to leave some time so we can actually have some fun and work with cash. So if that sounds good, this video is going to be for you if you are sort of struggling, constantly staying on budget, you are struggling with putting a system in place that's actually effective, and you just want to get like a different perspective. Now, quick disclaimer, a couple of disclaimers before we dive into the video itself. First one is, even though I have a background in finance, I'm not currently working in finance. I haven't worked within finance for a really long time actually, but I worked within the industry long enough to kind of know the basics. I'm not kind of presenting myself as an expert in any means. I'm just sort of like working alongside you, showing like really what's working for me. So kind of take it or leave it. The other disclaimer that I wanted to make real quick is that I understand that money and finances can be deeply triggering. So just kind of take it easy. I'm going to set up like little chapters within this video so that you can come in and out, go at your own pace, because I know that money is deeply emotional. And also, if we're already there, then it's also deeply spiritual. So just kind of be gentle with yourself. If you're finding yourself that it's bringing up emotions for you, which it might, sometimes we see other people kind of mirroring back what we need to kind of look at within ourselves. So just kind of keep that in mind, that it may bring up certain things, and it's okay. It's okay if you don't have the solution right away. The fact that you are here, that you're hanging out with me, that you have clicked on this video is like proof and testament that you are actually on the right track to kind of like work your way through that. So with all of this disclaimer out of the way, let's just kind of dive right into the video. And of course, if you are brand new and we've never met, my name is Meshi and I'm a person behind Align Plans. And we chat right now a couple of times a week. We talk about anything and everything minimalist planning. We haven't really talked about budgeting, but that will change soon. We talk about stationery, like literally everything that kind of goes within the planning community. But the intention behind this channel is first and foremost to use the things that we have with intention rather than just buying them to just accumulate dust. So if that sounds good, you would probably really enjoy hanging out with me here. Okay, let's first talk about like what is sort of the change, like why I'm changing my system. The reason why I decided to make some changes is because I was just getting really, really sick and tired of constantly under budgeting in certain categories or forgetting about certain categories. So here we are today. I put in a brand new system where it's holding me a little bit more accountable on certain areas. And so that's kind of like the backstory behind it. Now, how I got started by basically just having my planner, and I would actually have my digital spreadsheet. And what I'm using right now is I actually printed out a finance insert. So this is a finance insert from Notiq. I will just pop up a full picture of it here on the screen so you can take a look at both the actual monthly, which I kind of renamed. I kind of changed that to like bi-weekly because I generally end up budgeting bi-weekly. And then there's a full sheet of just expenses. Now I will probably also change that down the line later on, or just create a separate insert that will be fully dedicated to sinking funds. But those are like the main areas that I kind of felt like I need something. Now, the other thing that has changed also is that I started using cash envelopes. And so that's sort of like the biggest shift and the biggest change that have taken place when it comes to me managing our finances. Because for the most part, I was always managing everything digitally and online. It was never really me going to the bank and taking cash out and then, like stuffing envelopes. Like I never really bothered to do that because it just felt really redundant until right now, until I actually understood like the whole point behind it and why it's important to do that. So let's take a look at the system that I have in place right now. So in this planner, this is my VDS personal size 6-ring planner. And I just went on Amazon and I bought some envelopes because honestly, I didn't want to have paper envelopes. I felt like it would be a little bit too flimsy. So I just put in a few envelopes here. I do have some note sections here. And then I created at least a few categories that I knew that would be sort of foolproof. I knew that those categories will always exist. So I started with my business first. So, and September, like August, September is always sort of like a prep month for my business because most of my insurance that is due for both personally and also for the clinic is generally like the first payment is usually due in September, and then our registration is also, I start budgeting for it between September and October. So I spend those 2 months just kind of setting cash aside, and then I realized that I should also kind of set aside some cash for supplies. So I created a few basic categories. So this one is business insurance. I have my license registration. We have business miscellaneous, which really it can be used. Actually, let me show you this way. This can be used for literally anything. It could be me missing, I don't know, like a cleaning supply that I forgot to buy and I didn't budget for it. Or it could be, I don't know, I wanted to buy coffee for everybody for the month, like something that is really doesn't really fall into any one category. I want to have some cash aside for that, especially as we're moving into the holiday season. I really love doing like these random acts of kindness for people, especially when you have like a larger team. I think that it really like just brings the team spirit up, especially when everybody's working so hard. I also set one envelope up for HST. Right now, I do have a payment plan already in place for HST, but I wanted to also start prepping for the next installment that I know will be due. Business tax is pretty self-explanatory. It's sort of the same idea. And then we have supplies. So what I started with first, as far as like what I actually felt like I needed to get started, I bought this MD Midori A6 size notebook. It's just a super simple notebook. This one is in grid. Oh my goodness. So before I even started with envelopes, I did order some of these envelopes that I just showed you, and I set up those categories. But before I did that, I actually broke everything down on paper. So first I kind of wrote down the categories that I wanted to work with for both business and personal. That kind of made sense. And then I started breaking down each category based on the expenses that I know realistically based on like past performance or based on in the past of what I've already spent on them that I know will be like these regularly reoccurring expenses that I should actually budget for. And I've done that for business. I've done that for miscellaneous. I've done that for my license registration. Then I went and I kind of started breaking down the personal as well, which I will talk to you about in a second. And I kind of use this to like further break things down. Beyond that, like I'm also using this little notebook for quick little check-ins. So it's sort of like a commonplace planner where I can reflect on how things are going, as well as break down the nitty-gritty, very left brain logical side of things. So I highly recommend that you grab something where you have, I like notebooks because then I know that this is what it's dedicated for. So I would recommend getting a notebook if you're just getting started, and then kind of break down your finances on paper first and then move them into like an actual system. Now the other thing that I also invested in is this little binder, and this is an is it an A6? I believe this is also an A6 sized binder. It's a 6-ring binder from Amazon. Literally, you can just pick this up. It costs like 18 bucks. It's very inexpensive. It's not like the highest quality leather by any means, but it kind of gets the job done. So that's what I was more interested in. It's not so much to get something fancy, but just to get something for me to kind of get started with. So in this folder or in this binder, I basically keep track of anything and everything personal, but these are all things that I'm either pre-saving for or I'm breaking them down into bite-sized payments so that I can just pay it back in one lump sum, either when the time comes or I'm paying it back on a credit card if I already put it on a credit card. So it's essentially like me kind of pre-planning for certain subcategories within my personal budget that I felt like it would generally get neglected. So I'll show you exactly what I mean. So the first one is pretty obvious, and this is the one that our family struggles with the most, which is groceries. So my first category is groceries. Subscription, I didn't even know I needed it until I did, because I switched a lot of my subscriptions over to annual versus monthly. So whenever I switch something over to an annual expense, I like to kind of start saving for it per month or set cash aside for it per month and then just pay it back all at once. And you end up actually saving quite a bit of money. Canva is one of those subscriptions. Costco is another one. Epidemic Sound, so like all the music that you're listening to, it becomes a lot cheaper and more cost effective for me to just subscribe per month. No, I mean per year, than when I'm just paying for it, you know, each month. Like it's a lot more expensive. So I just kind of added all of those totals up, and then I end up basically just setting cash aside every month or every week, and then I can just pay it back. And per month it ends up being like $8. So it's so inexpensive that it's like, why didn't I do this sooner? Pets is another category. It's sort of similar to groceries that I constantly struggled with. And I constantly struggled with it because I didn't actually take a look at, like, in all honesty, of how much I should be setting aside for certain types of dog food, grooming, literally anything and everything pet care, until I kind of like price it all out. Again, the little notebook will make a world of a difference. So once I kind of priced it all out, then I came up with a number. And of course, this can change, but for the most part, it's okay. Kids activities is another one of those things where each of our girls have different activities going on, and for one of them it ends up being once every like 4 months that we pay. So we pay basically for the season, so it would be September, October, November, December. Next payment would be paid in December, and then so forth. So because of that, and then for my other daughter, it's like every 2 or 3 months, so it's more like a quarterly cost. So my next payment will be due in November. But me having sort of like this clear idea of how much I have to set aside, ironically, for both of them, I have to set aside the exact same amount, which becomes really easy to kind of budget for it. But I just kind of use this small little side tab sticky note so I can kind of break down the cost beyond, you know, breaking it down on paper. Next one is gifts. Gifts is sort of like birthday gifts. It's not so much like gifts as in something that we would be giving at Christmas time. This is literally just like, okay, we need to buy like a gift card for someone, or like we need to get a cake or like something like that. Having at least like a minimal amount of money, cash set aside for gifts is a very good idea, which right now it's empty. Clothes is another one of those things. I kind of broke it down into quarters because I don't buy clothes. I buy clothes more seasonally than I do like monthly or on a regular basis. I tend to buy like fairly like basic pieces, and I look at more like, oh my gosh, what is it called? It's not a timeless wardrobe, but I tend to look at more like key pieces that I buy, and then I'm good for like a year. So I feel like that about jeans. I feel like that like with t-shirts and stuff like that, like I usually just like look at the most inexpensive way of getting them, because I don't see myself spending $50 on a t-shirt unless it's like athletic wear. So having like a clear idea of how much I wanted to set aside for clothes without really like looking at my bi-weekly budget and being like, okay, cool, you're gonna be like short $300 or $500 because you spend money on clothes. So I didn't really want to run into that again, because we've done that before in the past. So for now, I just kind of broke it down and just created a basic budget every like 3 months, and then see how this will go. And of course, I will adjust this as I go. Next one is Christmas. Christmas is pretty self-explanatory. Basically, we generally buy like things and gifts for kids. I tend to, so I'm kind of weird like this. I have a hard time, especially going to like a get together without really bringing something. You know what I mean? Like to me, that just doesn't really sit well. Even when all the adults kind of have this conversation of, don't worry about it, it's fine. Like we're just gonna be giving gifts to the kids. But then it's like, yeah, but like you have a whole bunch of adults sitting around and you're not even giving them like a small little gift basket or like, you know, just like a bottle of wine. Like do something. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be an expensive gift for people to feel appreciated and valued and like included. It's more like the inclusivity aspect that I'm kind of missing. And I've seen this numerous times with get-togethers where it's like, oh no, I can just buy myself the whatever. But honestly, like if you're strict, you're not going to buy yourself anything. And if you're loosey-goosey with your budget, then you're going to overspend anyway. So if we kind of already budget that in, that you're probably going to be like going and like make sure that like you buy something for everybody, in my opinion. But I mean, it might be running differently in your family. But I really like to be more inclusive. So having like a set budget aside for each family is very helpful. Now that I'm thinking about it, actually, going back to the whole gifts thing, gifts are also, you know, at Christmas time, and I don't know if you would want to do this under Christmas or under gifts. I look at it as gifts. But under gifts, we can also include things like at Christmas time when you buy like cards or like poinsettias or like a box of chocolate for, you know, your landlord or your cleaning lady, like something small that it's not that big of a deal, but it can kind of screw up your budget if you have like 10 people to buy for. So that's kind of, I just thought of that now. Anyway, moving on. So next up is hair and makeup. The whole hair thing, I mean, yeah, I could have thrown that into personal care. I really wanted to kind of differentiate that because there's 3 girls in the family. We all have long hair. I tend to not buy really crappy, cheap shampoos. So to me, it helps, especially if I buy them like every 2 months, it helps if I just kind of set that cash aside. I feel like that about, you know, makeup as well. I tend to buy green beauty makeup, which tend to cost a little bit more. Not all the time, but sometimes. So having at least like a basic budget set aside for it, I thought that that would be like accurate without making this kind of sink into the fun budget, without making this into like, you have like a whatever budget, you can do whatever you want with it. But yeah, like that, I look at it more like something that I would spend on like coffee versus like hair and makeup. Again, that's just me. Next up, we have Fun Meshi. So this is Fun Meshi is like a bi-weekly budget that I set aside, and this is where like I put in like at least a little bit of cash for whatever I want, like no questions asked. If I buy books with it, I do. If I go out for dinner, that's what we'll do. If like it's sort of like a large miscellaneous that is really personal to me, which means that it's up to me of what I end up spending it on. And then we have planner. This is also brand new. I have one category for planner and one category for pens. Planner is to kind of prep and to help aid paying for the annual cost of like the planner supplies and things like that. I did have one as well for stationery, which is more of a monthly expense, whereas planner is something where like when I'm buying like the, you know, like, well, the Hobonichis or like the Sterling ink order and things like that. So I kind of added it up as to how much I will need within this category, and then that's what I'm setting aside. Pens, self-explanatory, except I never really budgeted money for pens because I never really felt like, I always just kind of felt like having like just a minimal budget set aside for stationery was okay, but really some of the pens that I'm looking at are a bit more pricey. So if I set a limit of, let's say, 2 or 3 pens per year, then for one, it will avoid me not accumulating really cheap and inexpensive pens that I really don't actually enjoy using. And 2, it allows me that freedom to actually try more expensive fountain pens without me cringing or feeling triggered or feeling guilty about it. I think the big thing with this is to not feel guilty for investing in those items, especially if it's something that's important to you, right? Next up is date night. Date night is pretty self-explanatory. I want to do this like on a monthly basis where I kind of look at like, okay, how many date nights do I realistically want to save money for? And then kind of set that cash aside. And then the last one is credit cards. So this is not debt repayment. This is literally something that is within these categories that I already mentioned that I placed on a credit card because so far I haven't had a chance to accumulate enough within the savings, but I needed to buy the thing because it was like more like a timing thing. So I placed it on a credit card and I'm keeping track of it. So an example of that would be like we ordered pizza the other night. Well, I placed it on a credit card. I didn't pay cash for it, but then I took money out of my fund money and my husband's fund money, and then that's how we pay for it. And then it just literally me dumping the cash back in. Another one was one of my business supplies order where I already placed the order for it. I had to buy it because again, it was more time specific. And then I make a note of it, and then I'm keeping track of like, okay, how much do I have to set aside? Like how many weeks do I have to set that cash aside for it to be paid back? So having like a paper tracker like this is super helpful because then you don't get confused of like, where are you at within the repayment of that specific, thing that you're trying to pay back. Next one is kids clothing, constantly under budgeting this. I hated budgeting money for this, honestly, because I would never really acknowledge like how often I needed to buy clothes for the kids. I would always try to like add it into the grocery budget. And needless to say, after reflection, I realized that I was really straining our grocery budget because I didn't have excess savings set aside for these certain categories, like pet food or kids clothing. And then the last one is personal care. So this would be like protein powders, literally anything personal care, vitamins. I love buying really good quality soaps, and personal care. That's all I'm going to say about that. So now that we've gone through that, let's do a little bit of cash stuffing because I already took some cash out. I do have my category broken down. A portion of it I've already done. I already went to the bank and so I had thought that we would be able to just kind of fill that up so you can kind of see it in action. One thing that I have noticed that I do a lot is to have like a ton of fives. I don't know why, but it brings me so much joy to just have like $1 million in fives. I don't know. It just always feels like if I have larger denominations, then it feels like it's almost like I'm not going to be able to put it in every single category, which is funny, but also kind of accurate. I don't know. It might just be just my head. Although like I do like to kind of break things down so that it's like an even Steven where you have like, I don't know, 3 or 4, like for like $100, you would have like 3 20s and like 2 10s and like 4 5s. So like your smaller denominations increase in quantity, your larger denominations are kept at like the lowest. So that's kind of how I learned it. At least that's how we did it at the bank. Good old banking days. The other thing that I wanted to mention, just quick little side note, one of the biggest things that I noticed, that like one of the biggest motivators for me to kind of do this, all of this work, is because I really, really, really wanted to have the ability to heal my relationship with my money. I really wanted to like sort of step away from feeling like I'm constantly failing and to be in this scarcity mindset and feeling like there's like a lot of shame and guilt that has to be attached to how we manage our finances. And I wanted to be able to step more into and upgrade essentially to more of an abundance mindset where we have more than enough and we're more than well taken care of. And everything is learnable, everything is fluid, and if I make one mistake, that does not mean that everything is kind of thrown out the window. It just means that I made one mistake and I can reflect and learn from it. So it's very much a mindful activity for me, even though it feels very, very logical. But I'm trying to do that with the sense of not feeling guilty and restricted every single time that I set cash aside, but feeling like, there has to be like a sense of optimism that is attached to it and make it fun and exciting. So I just kind of wanted to preface that. All right, let's take a look at the categories. I believe my first set of categories, and I'm using my Hobonichi weeks, like the back of the Hobonichi weeks for like kind of breaking down my sinking funds. So I'm just gonna set this aside and then we can start stuffing. I think I'm going to actually start with the business categories because I don't have that many business categories. So it's a little bit easier in my opinion. So first up we have business insurance. So business insurance will get $37.50, which really in this one is just gonna get 35. So 20, 30, 35. And currently we already have $40 set aside here. So now it's getting another 35. Okay, next one is license registration, which is actually coming up really soon. So license registration is going to get $62.50. So let's do 20, 40, 50, 55, 60. So it will basically get 60. And it already has 20, 30, 40, 50, 55, 60, and it already has 60 in there. Next up is going to be supplies. Supplies is getting $30. Actually, let me use some fives. 10, 20. No, you know what? There we go, we'll use some fives. And supplies currently has, I believe it has $30 already. Yeah. Okay, so that's it on this binder. So this one is just mainly business. And let's take a look at personal. So the personal one is going to get, we're looking at subscription. I've already stuffed groceries because I already bought groceries, so the next time we'll go in for like next week. So for subscription, we are doing, how much are we doing for subscription? Subscription is going to get $50. So let's do 20. I know I should actually put this here, considering that I'm left-handed. So there's 20, 30, 40, 45, 50. And subscription currently has, it has $10. Because initially I started out with like, it only is like $8, but then I renewed Canva for the year and that's gonna be coming up really soon. So I'm just trying to like set some cash aside for it before it actually comes up. Next category is going to be clothes. So clothes is getting $12 because I don't have bills. I mean, I don't have change. Then clothes is going to be getting $10. Next up, we have planner. Planner is getting $60. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And I don't know why I have $30 left, but. And currently planner has 20, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. It currently has $60. We found it. By accident, I put into subscription 60 bucks instead of 50. So that leaves us with $40 to put into kids activities. So let me just find that. I knew I missed a category. Here we go. Kids activity is getting $40. So there's 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. There we go. Done. This is basically it. So this is kind of how I'm looking at it, where I'm looking at how much is left over. Because my income fluctuates, it's fairly consistent, but it still fluctuates based on like how many appointments I have and things like that. And of course that will also shift in January. But when you're self-employed, it does get a little bit challenging to kind of figure out like what is my base income. So I just kind of look at on a bi-weekly basis how much money is coming in, and out of that how much am I going to be paying into, like what is really left over for like must-haves, things like groceries and pet care, and then what is also left over for everything else that I'm potentially saving for that I find important. I do try my best to like budget for it, and then essentially we just kind of stop when we run out of money or if we're short on certain months. So right now from this paycheck I was able to kind of set a few things aside and start pre-planning, which was really, really good. But I know that that's not really always going to be the case. So whenever I can, I really want to be more proactive with it. And then whenever I can kind of like pull back a little bit, then obviously that will be the other thing that I really want to focus on. I will likely add more categories into this one, into more of like the long-term savings, where I can also start saving for like an emergency fund. Ideally, I'm shooting for about 6 months worth of monthly expenses, just because I want to have like that healthy, like nice chunk of cash in case anything happens, because you just never, honestly, you just never know. And for us to constantly live paycheck to paycheck, I'm definitely ready to kind of let that go. So this is sort of my system. It's not very complicated, but I have to say that you have to know the difference between like day-to-day bill budgeting versus pre-planning and financial planning and savings, because like a lot of this is already you're predetermining what you're going to be saving for in the future. And then also investment management. So investment management would be something like, okay, now you have all this cash that you have set aside in emergency fund or in whatever savings. What are we doing with that? How will we invest that so that it's actually like earning you cash rather than just kind of sitting there, not even making, you know, like 2% interest. Like this, if it's not even matching inflation, you're actually losing money. But that's just my 2 cents on that. We will get into more of that. If you guys are interested, let me know, like, this is your question of the day. Let me know where you're at within your budgeting journey. How is your actual relationship with your finances? Are you currently working on it? What's happening? Just give me like a quick little snapshot. Like you can even just answer it in an emoji if you don't feel comfortable, or like, some of us are like a lot more honest about this than others. So I'm hoping that a video like this will kind of hold space for you to feel comfortable to really reflect honestly without judgment and without feeling guilty or without making you feel like you're absolutely failing at life. I'm here to tell you you're not. We all kind of make mistakes along the way, and it's not common knowledge, as in it's not really taught within. Like if you didn't grow up in a family where people around you had really healthy relationship with their finances and with money management, then it's all self-taught for the most part. So just kind of keep that in mind, like give yourself a little bit of grace and be gentle with yourself. Again, I will set up different section within this video so that you can kind of come back to it, watch it again, want to understand what cash stuffing is, or you just wanted to kind of just see the cash stuffing part, that's no problem at all. Either way, I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I know this is like slightly different than what you're used to seeing from me, but this was hitting really, really close to home, so I really wanted to kind of speak on it, of where I'm at in my journey, in hopes that, you know, it holds space for you to kind of reflect on your journey as well. This is all I got for you. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you did, you can give it a thumbs up, you can subscribe, do all the things. You can also support me in in the membership if you feel called to do so. But just you hanging out with me here means the world to me, so thank you so much. That's all I got for you, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video. Bye.